Sheila Weinberg wrote a book entitled Healing the Heart, and she tells the story of her Aunt Margaret, how as she was growing older, she was finding it difficult to remember things. Can anybody relate to that? And as the years were passing, she was actually losing her ability to put words together until she got to a point where she had only 2 words in her vocabulary. Whenever anyone tried to engage her in conversation, she would use one of these 2 words. And the words were temporarily or unexpectedly. Now, here's a woman who lived a very long life and perhaps observed life closely for many years, and these 2 words seemed to sum up all that she had learned about life. She learned how temporary all things are and how unexpectedly things happen to us, that our expectations about life are not always fulfilled, and that in a moment, a phone call, a chance meeting, a doctor's report can change our lives forever. Now, the author, in telling this story, reminds us that most of our life takes place unexpectedly, even if we spend a huge amount of time planning and trying to be in control of the consequences, that we are never fully in control, that reality is elusive, constantly changing. Everything is here, but only temporarily, and usually unexpectedly. On this 3rd Sunday of our Lenten season, we see in that first reading that the Israelites are whining and ungrateful and disappointed and thankless. Moses was leading them to freedom, and they complained. Things were much better back in Egypt. Why did you bring us out here to die? We're thirsty, it's hot. The Israelites must have thought that once they left Egypt, it was going to be an easy road to freedom. But it wasn't, and they fooled themselves. How often do we fool ourselves into thinking that life should be free of adversity when it isn't? And then we, like the Israelites, are filled with complaints. Aunt Margaret's wisdom is a great message for us. All is temporary, and much of what happens to us in life is unexpected. That none of us escape the challenges of life. There's no simple, easy path, and we can easily be fooled when we think that life is free of challenges or tensions or adversity. Now, while sports fishing off Melbourne Beach, there was a tourist, and he capsized his boat. He could swim, but his fear of alligators kept him clinging to the overturned craft. On the shore, he spotted an old beachcomber, and he yelled out to him. He said, "Are there any gators around here?" And the old beachcomber responded, "Nah, they ain't been around for years." So the tourist began to feel safe, and he started to leisurely swim towards the shore. About halfway there, he once again stopped and shouted to the old beachcomber, "How'd you get rid of the gators?" Well, the beachcomber shouted back, "We didn't do nothing. The sharks got them." Just getting it, aren't you? The world is filled with perils. If it's not gators, it's sharks. If it's not sickness, it can be failure. If it's not failure, it's aging. If it's not aging, it's death. There's nowhere we can run to and hide. All of us have and will have or have had our wilderness experiences. All of us will spend some time in the dark shadows. So, like the Israelites caught in their wilderness, we do ask the same question often in our lives. Is God present in our midst? Where is this God? Our wilderness experiences, our times in the desert that all of us encounter, certainly have the ability to challenge the depths of our faith. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing because the only real faith is one that's been through the desert and survived, been through the desert and has come out of the desert changed and different, with a deeper perspective on life, a deeper understanding of this elusive God. The challenge for us, for all of us, is to enter into the wilderness and be open to never being the same again, and experiencing a God that we never knew before. Certainly the people of Japan are in a deep wilderness experience, and they are learning in the most painful of ways how temporary things are and how unexpectedly life changes forever. You've seen the scenes of homes and cars and thousands of people simply being washed out to sea. What's the death count? 10,000 with 15,000 missing? It's mind-boggling. As we know, the Japanese culture is one that does not easily show emotion. They're a very private people and obviously still in a state of shock. But I'm sure they're asking, is God in our midst? How could God allow this to happen? It's easy to be like the Israelites. It's simple to be ungrateful and grumbling and complaining and angry. Because life isn't supposed to be like this. The stock market isn't supposed to be so volatile. Gas prices aren't supposed to be so high. We can't sell our home, been out of work for so long. I'm too young to get sick or lose my spouse. Why didn't I get that promotion? Why is my neighbor wealthier than I am? We can live a life of blaming and complaining, or we can struggle with a deep spirituality to integrate the wisdom of Aunt Margaret, that things are temporary and unexpected. When we integrate this kind of wisdom, then we live a life that truly understands what is most important in life. And what is most important in life is taking care of one another. And when we take care of one another, that's when the presence of God is found. Because we are the presence of God for one another. We make God manifest. God is manifested through us. There's a great story of a pizza delivery woman who truly manifested the presence of a caring God. On a daily basis for over 3 years, Domino's employee Susan Guy brought a large pepperoni pizza to an 82-year-old woman by the name of Jean Wilson. But when Mrs. Wilson hadn't called for 3 days to order her pizza, Susan Guy started to worry about her. After knocking on the door and even questioning Mrs. Wilson's neighbors, she finally called 911. When the police broke down the door, they discovered that Mrs. Wilson had fallen and couldn't get up. Susan Guy simply said, "I'm just a pizza delivery person, that's all." Many, many times that's enough. If only all of us could say, "I'm just a Christ follower, that's all." And because of that, display thoughtful and attentive and courageous love for one another, then that question would be answered in our lives. Each one of us has to go through some kinds of wilderness experiences in our lives. Each one of us will be spending time or have spent time in the desert. Each one of us has to face that question, is God in our midst? We can run away from it. We can despair of this God that we cannot possibly understand. Or we can face it squarely and experience God in ways we never thought possible. Whatever our choice might be, when we go through those desert and wilderness experiences, we cannot possibly remain the same. Somehow we have to be different. All is temporary. Life changes in a moment, in unexpected ways. But if we face it, we will be confronted with the God who is always present and never truly does ever abandon us.